Today on The Riff, Jeremy and Justin talk about the people that formed them throughout their lives. And they also play hot stick. It's like hot potato with a phone. We hope today is helpful. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to another episode of The Riff. And Justin, you're back.
I'm back.
I never know. Are you going to be across the table or are you not going to be across the table?
I never know. You never tell me when you have somebody on. So it's kind of like, here's the deal.
I'll tell you why. Can I tell you why?
Yeah, tell me.
You know Jamie?
Yeah.
Your wife?
Yeah.
She has made it clear that when I tell you in advance that I don't need your services across the table on the Riff, that it really impacts how you treat the world around you.
That's true.
And so she's asked that we would just rip it off like a Band-Aid, but not the day before. So I'm committed to letting you live in constant confusion because it's for your own well-being and the well-being of those that you have to interact with.
I can see that. That's helpful because I do take it personally.
Very personally.
Now, I like DR. I liked having him on the Riff.
I think our audience did too. I think it's obvious our audience prefers when I do that.
Now, I would say so. And then did I like how it happened? I can't say I was a fan. I can't say that I was.
Yeah. Well.
Because here's the deal. I prep for these.
I know you do. Well, I know you stretch.
I stretch.
Do you do some mental prep too?
I do mental prep. Physical? I do a breathing exercise.
And you know what? I've heard that. That is accurate.
Yeah. So I'm just saying.
But if for some reason I can't find a guest, I'm always more than happy to have you as a placeholder here as our co-host. I want you to know, and I believe that with everything within me.
Am I blushing right now? Because I am.
And underneath that beard.
My goodness.
Underneath that beard.
Thank you. Oh yeah, and your beard too.
Well, if you're not watching, maybe you don't know, but by the time this is why this is important. Thanks for noticing it. This is why it's important because by the time this airs, not a shot. I'm still bearded up.
Stop. Why? We talked about this.
Look at it.
It looks great.
You're just saying that you're trying to be nice because you know I'm insecure.
I'm not. People out there are like, whoa, Jeremy.
Really?
Growing a beard. Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. But anyway, you're probably blushing underneath the beard. But it's always good to have you. And Justin, today we're going to play a game.
I love games.
Yes, we're going to play a game.
I've always said this. If Jeremy Johnson has a game, I ask two questions, and it is when and where.
Yes. Do you have a favorite staff game we've played over the years?
100%. You did this game where I'm 100% sure that you made it up on the fly.
Okay.
And it was a Christmas party where we were at the church. We didn't rent any place out.
I always just say that was good stewardship, saving
great
some money.
Stewardship. And you just had a bucket of numbers.
Okay.
And you just kept making stuff up on the fly. And it was probably 15 minutes of two people just up there. It was. I remember.
Awesome. So every Christmas party, we have a theme. Yeah. And that one was the original Christmas.
That's exactly right.
And so everyone has to dress like nativity set or something. And I remember that.
What'd you go as?
Jesus.
Oh.
With a birthday hat on because the original Christmas is his birthday. And so it was Jesus. Yeah, so it was great. But that was fun. Okay, but today, this game's going to be a little different. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to alternate. It's going to be like hot potato, verbal hot potato.
Okay.
I'm going to kick it to you.
Do we have anything to signify who's speaking?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, whoever's holding the hot stick. This is a hot stick right here.
That's your phone.
It is. Okay. So whoever's holding the hot stick, it's your turn then to share. What I want to do is I want to talk about people who made an impact in your life significantly that were not employed by a Christian organization.
Ooh, now, all right. Okay.
I don't believe that you're excluded from having an impact on someone's life when you work for a Christian organization. That's not the point. But what I want to do is today I want to talk about the kind of influence we can all have without having to wait for, the whole difference between a calling and a career. A calling and a career. Some people think that a calling is when I no longer have to work a career, but I can focus full time on what God's doing. And we've talked about this a lot, but we just believe our calling is best fleshed out through how we handle our career and the impact we can make doing whatever it is we do, whatever our hand finds to do. It says in Scripture, do for the glory of God, and we can honor people and make a difference. So I want to talk about how that's been true in our lives. I'll have you share a story, me share a story, and we'll go. Winner is the one who still has a story when the other one can't remember one. Are you ready for the hot stick, Justin?
Yeah. I mean, is this going to be like a 4-hour podcast? Is this how we're doing this?
You're trying to intimidate me that you got a lot of stories.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. I think it's going to be a 15-minute podcast because you've only got one.
I think I've only got one.
Here we go.
I'm going to go for a long time.
Go.
You know, back in the day, I've got the hot stick right
Yes,
now
you
if you're
do.
not watching. I'm going to name out a guy that was in my life. His name's Robert Mann.
Robert Mann.
Robert Mann.
Tell me about Robert.
Okay,
Double N.
Double N. Yeah, and my last name is Glenn, and I never want you to not put 2 N's, just to let you know.
You're double N.
Almost, Glenn.
If you're,
When people rob me of an N, it infuriates me.
if you don't space it, it looks like an M.
Right? And I don't want that either.
No.
Like if your cursive stuff
N space N.
No, just N.
Well, but,
No
but if you don't have the space, then it looks like
I
an
don't want
M.
you to do a super like long space because
Oh,
then
no,
it
no,
looks
that's
like
not what I
Glenn
meant.
N.
Right. Yeah.
It's
no.
2 N's.
Yeah.
So okay. So Robert Mann, he worked for my dad. And this guy was very close to me in my high school years. So high school going into college, and ends up, he was working a factory job. And I don't have kids. I'm in high school. But he really, really taught me what it meant to like actually chase after something that you were passionate about.
Okay. How
He
so?
hated working at a factory.
He did.
Hated it. He hated it. He worked for my dad on the side. And we would talk about it all the time, right? He had just had a kiddo, a little girl. And it was the first time that I remember I ever entertained the idea of what my life looked like as an adult. So it was just kind of because he was already an adult. And he's he's just such a good guy. And it was the first time that I was able to have conversations about like what the next season or maybe 2 seasons is going to look like for me. So just listening and learning from him, he ended up quitting his job.
Okay.
So he's like, man, I was in the shower the other day and it just came to me. He's like, I'm done. He's like, I don't want to live a life that is false to who I am. So I'm like, really? What does that mean? I'm like, what? He's like, I've been working at a factory now for about 8-9 years. And it's because I have a steady paycheck. I know exactly what I'm going to provide for my family, but I'm not providing for my family. I was like, really? So it was the first time that my little brain was churning on what it actually means to provide. Because boy, I grew up I'm a workaholic, I think. I am. I
would not disagree.
I think I might be. And it's like a badge that I can wear, be like, I can grind, I can do this, I can go hard. But it was the first time that I felt or thought about what it actually means to do that. And that conversation, like when he quit and went to work for my dad, was the first and probably it's the only thing in my mind whenever I think about like Jamie and the girls. I go back to that conversation with Robert, even though it was so simple. It was such a simple conversation. But it's stuck in my brain. Like it is still in me whenever I get into a space. I'm all over the map right now. Yesterday, I went to long day. We had a long day of work yesterday, which I love. I'm like, bring it. I really do. Like, I love it. But I also know the girls love being with me. So there was like this weird, I could have gone from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. and not complained. Like I would have loved it. But I also know the girls want to be with me at some point during the day. And Ella May sprained her elbow. She sprained a tendon in her elbow.
Is this how I find out about it?
I know.
Wow.
So I had to take care of it because Jamie was out during that time of the day. So I took the girls to the doctor for like an hour and a half.
It happened yesterday?
Yeah. But here's the crazy deal, right? As I'm sitting in the office, I'm literally like, oh my gosh, I got so much to do. Girls, we gotta go. I got a meeting to get to. Let's go. Like to the doc. And there is at some point, like that comes back to my mind of like, and I'm like, this is a gift. It's a gift in the day. So use it, like be where my feet are. But I thought about that. I'm like, I thought about living a life that I don't like want to regret. Right. And I'm like, I'm with the girl. So all of that to say, very, very long story and very probably doesn't make a lot of sense because there's not like a lot of threads to it. All I'm saying is this guy had one conversation with me, and he had multiple conversations with me throughout our time together. But that one little moment that was probably 2 minutes, 3 minutes is still with me, 25 years later.
Wow.
Which is just crazy to think. So when you talk about somebody making an impact on somebody's life, the first thing I thought of was like, all right, so who has just poured into me for years? Who's been a mentor to me? And Robert came to my mind, and I'm like, we had that one conversation. So even the smallest thing can make the biggest impact, especially, I'm just going to keep talking. I told you I'm going to go, especially with students. So
I also need to explain the rules of the game is when you're done, you pass it back to me. And
so
that's my
I
turn.
have to give it back to you?
Eventually. Keep going.
I love our students. I love our student ministry because when you look at what the student leaders are doing, the student pastors are doing, and especially what the volunteers are doing for kiddos that age, it's important.
Yeah.
It's important. So I know that we're not spending 15 hours a week with them. I know we're not spending a year of mentorship with all of our students. But as a volunteer, you might have had that one moment at camp that you spoke a little bit of encouragement to a kiddo that doesn't have that encouragement at home. It's going to make an impact. So all of that to say, I love that. I love Robert. And are you ready for the stick?
I'm ready.
Okay, I'm gonna give it to you now.
Phone.
Oh yeah, wow.
Okay, so for me, I was probably 7 years old. Went to a church that utilized a Sunday school system. So very familiar for those who grew up in church in the 80s and 90s. And so it's basically like small groups for any type of Bible education. So as a kid, that was just something we would always do. I had teachers, Mary and Dana Horton. So the fact that I can remember my Sunday school teachers when I was 7 years old, now that's
the old Hortons.
That's the Hortons.
Oh, the Hortons.
But they're not young anymore, but yes. So I remember I got sick once and was not able to go to church. Maybe it was a vacation. I don't even remember. But we were like the type of family, we were always in church. Somehow we were not in church. I got a letter in the mail the following week with a pack of baseball cards in it from Dana Horton that said, "We sure missed you in Sunday school this last week, Jeremy. Hope to see you next week." Okay. Decades later, pretty big baseball card guy. I don't know if that's because of Dana. It's interesting to think about it. But I've gotten a lot of mail over the years. That's something I remember as a 7-year-old thinking they want me. There's not a shot I was missing the next week. And so Dana Horton, booyah, yours.
That's it? That was fast.
I'm trying to set a standard. Just trying to set a standard.
That's passive aggressive. I took like 10 minutes, man.
I'm not here to argue.
Good night. All right. Andy Inman. So Andy Inman was a coach of mine when I was in Mighty Mites.
You're making this up.
I am 100% making this up. It was a book I read.
He was my fencing instructor.
I lived in France for 4 years, and he was a coach in, I was in 4th or 5th grade.
Yeah.
And broke my arm playing for him. And the way that he handled that was what a pastor would do. Like, and he wasn't a pastor, but showed up at the hospital, and then showed up at my house with gifts. And then every single game that we had, he would have some type of memento from that game that he would bring me.
Wow.
So knowing that I was I'm not able to play, I'm missing out on it. So he would have some kind of thing that he would come up with to commemorate that game. And then he would bring it, present it to me, and just walk through how much I'm a part of the team as all of those guys and all this kind of stuff. So it just showed me what teamwork is, showed me what it was to be a part of a team, even if you're removed for a season. It showed me just what it looked like to care. So a good guy.
I love it.
He's a good guy.
I love it. Okay,
Stick coming to you.
All right, got it. Bill Ramish.
Not really either.
He was the principal at Celtice Elementary in Post Falls, Idaho, 83854, if you'd like to look that up. He was a principal there for quite a while. He used to be a bronc rider. He's friends with my parents, and not like Ford Bronco Sport. I'm talking like the animal.
Okay.
And I would hear their stories. They would be talking, and And he was a principal at a school when I was in junior high. He was a tennis player. And so he would take my brother and I out to play tennis. And so we would meet them at the tennis courts. We would meet him at the tennis courts. My mom would drop us off and we would play tennis. He was always super encouraging about our game. And then he always had quarters to walk us over to the Pepsi machine. And we would get an ice cold Pepsi from the outdoor vending machine there in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And I look back and he was always a voice of encouragement. And it's interesting, he always helped me believe that I was better than I was. And I didn't need accuracy, I needed hope in those moments of my life. And he's just and at the time I didn't know what kind of gift it was, but looking back, surely he was very busy. And I'm thinking, there was nothing he was doing in his life. It did not benefit him. There was nothing he was doing there that made him do that. It was just a kind man who would play tennis with my brother and me and buy us a Coke and turn into a lifetime of memory. So stick coming to you.
All right. I've mentioned this one, I think, maybe. Does that count if I've mentioned it a little bit?
Doesn't count.
Great. Troy Botts.
Yeah.
So Troy was the mentor that I had in college. And even though at the end of the time with him, I'm like, wow, I really did learn a lot about the Bible with him. I really did. And it was crazy because Jamie and I were praying about it and we were getting ready to get married. And one of the things that we were praying was, man, I really want to find somebody that can lead me just through biblical knowledge. I didn't go to Bible school. I'm in Missouri State and I had a religious studies minor. So I'm familiar with walking through it and I'm following Jesus, but I really wanted to dig into it. Yeah. And it was, it was the weirdest thing ever. It was at a Borders bookstore. So it's when Borders was still here.
It's not very Barnes and Noble of you to say.
I know. And we're literally in the same section and that's how we meet. And he's like, oh, have you read blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, no, blah, 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 blah. Slow conversation. And he's like, hey, so he doesn't work at a church and it's not affiliated with a Christian organization because it wasn't yet. He's like, I'm thinking about starting a student ministry in Oklahoma. I'm heading back there in about 2 years. But would you want to go through some of the stuff with me, that I'm putting together? And that's how that whole thing started. And it was literally a week after our prayer of, man, just find something. So I really do feel like that was a spirit-led moment, even though when looking back on it, I'm like, wow, some Calvinistic elements to that I'm like, I don't know if I agree with anymore, but I learned a lot, right? I got a lot of text in me from him. So I'm still very thankful for him. So yeah, Troy Botts.
Okay.
All right, coming to you.
I've got one. And then if you got one more, we can land with that. But then I want to make sure we have time for some principles here that we pull out. But one for me is Mr. Sartain. He was my 6th grade teacher and 7th grade teacher. So I went to a small school, private school, and so he grew 1 year with our class. So he would take 2 years with the same group of people. Cool guy right out of college. I've been a college football player, and so coming into our little town, our little school, he was the coolest guy. We all wanted to be like him. And he represented somebody who was a follower of Jesus, very passionate about it, very vocal about it, private school. And also someone we all thought was cooler than any of our friends. And so we're like, we all want to be like Mr. Sartain. So I'll never forget, 7th grade was the toughest year of my life growing up. Just a bunch of stuff going on. My older brother was going through a lot of rough times, and so it was causing a lot of chaos at home at that time. And for a 7th grader, I wasn't prepared to handle it. I didn't know what was going on. I remember during those roughest days, he happened to be my teacher, and he started calling me Smiley. And I've probably told this story several times over the years, but he started calling me Smiley, and he always did from that point on. Always called me Smiley. And I know I do smile a lot, and we've joked about that different times. I've got some stories that was annoying, but I do smile a lot. And maybe he called me Smiley because I did smile a lot back then, but what was ironic to me as I look back, it was probably the one season where I smiled the least. And so I always wonder, did he call me smiley because he's describing it, or did he call me smiley because he's prescribing it, right? Is it one of those situations where he's like, yeah, I know you're going through something, and he called it out, but whatever was going on in his mind, it felt like an identity. He was inviting me to something, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And when I saw that on Facebook, we hadn't stayed in contact at all. But I remember it was meaningful to me. And sad. I was sad because I felt I lost someone. And even though we didn't have a relationship, what he had provided for me years ago really gave me a confidence that was so timely because of the chaos that was going on I was dealing with. So Mr. Sartain. So that's mine.
I love it. Let's go through some elements.
Some principles.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we look back at that and others, here's the ultimate goal. It's not nostalgia time. I want us to have, as we share our story, I'm hoping that you all are hearing your story and thinking about your story of who are some people that shaped you? Who are some people that made an impact on your life? How did they do that? And maybe for some of you it was huge, big, but none of these stories were big. It was a conversation of someone sharing a life principle for you. It was someone, a pretty big investment of saying, hey, let's study together. It was someone giving me a word of encouragement, taking me to play tennis. These little gifts turn into a big impact. And so what I want to do is never minimize the impact of our gift based on the size of the investment, and to really think about how can we position ourselves to make an impact, be used by God, fulfill our calling today. Who in our life needs that? So that's one of the principles for me that I think about is it doesn't matter the size of the investment. Never be intimidated by that, because God can use your investment to make a huge impact. And I want to encourage everyone to think about that. As you think about these things, what kind of connections, takeaways would you give to somebody who's saying, man, how do I make an impact? We talk about this a lot of times at church, arrows out. We talk about investing in people. What do we need to know about this stuff?
I think you do such a good job. I've learned a ton just from you on this. You don't have to wait for a position to make an impact.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And I think that was important for me too. Like understanding, like, it doesn't matter if I'm at North Point for another 10 years or another 10 days. Like,
right.
Okay. Like, for real, like, love being here, but I know that my impact is not attached to what my role is, or attached especially to being inside of a church. I talk to a lot of people that are like, yeah, well, just when I get into ministry, then I'll be able to, like, what do you mean? You're already in ministry. Like, I don't get that. I don't get that. So when I look back at these stories, I'm like, these people pastored to me way before I feel like a pastor pastored to me, right? Yeah. And you might say, well, yeah, they didn't know Jesus. How do you know if they knew Jesus? I'm like, they all led to something better in forming and shaping me, right? Like it or not, the way I look at that is Jesus is working through them. Yeah. And I don't know the relationship with Jesus, other than the mentor, right? Like but the other two, I'm like, I don't know your faith walk. I don't know. I just know that there's something inside of what we had in that moment that you gave me that helps me be a better person now, and honestly gets me closer to Jesus in some way. And I don't know what that is or how that works, but I just feel like he's drawing me closer through things in ways that people don't really even look at. And I think that the important thing is to understand that those small micro moments are the most important elements. I always have believed that it's like this big, grandiose thing that you have to do. I have always had an issue of inadequacy, like inside of me, like feeling like I'm made for more of this. Like, what am I doing? Like, and I've always been waiting for like this big moment, these big things, and it's just not about that. It's the same thing when you asked me the question when we were building Nixa, and like then we opened it, and I'm like, I kind of like the process better. Like I'm starting to learn, like it's in these small moments. It's not this one big giant grand opening, release the doves. Like that's not, it's fun. It's awesome. A great moment. But I don't think I'm living for those anymore. It's those small things. And I think that you just have to remember, like, these people made a huge impact in my life. And it wasn't through these grand opening moments. It was just in everyday life that you're able to look someone in the eye and connect. So thank you for walking through that. I mean, you do such a good job of teaching career and calling. Like I could listen to that message every single week. I mean, don't do it every week. It's going to get a little stale, but it's such a good.
Make it easier for me too. So I'm down. I do feel like one of the things that we've been talking about, we do that series Pathways, and we talk about one of the 5 things we want from all North Pointers is to develop this awareness of the Spirit of God using us throughout our day. And I think one of the ways to do that is to intentionally carve out a few moments, different times during the day, and ask yourself. For me, that's been helpful. So people are like, what does it mean to live by the Spirit, to be Spirit-led people? For me, what it means is some intentional times before the day, during the day, at the end of the day, to stop and to ask, how am I doing? What are you up to? How can I be a part of it? And so some of that is literally if I sit down and I start going through my phone and just say, God, who needs an encouraging text today? Or, sometimes we make the prayer, God bless Johnny, right? And I wonder if God's making the prayer, Jeremy bless Johnny, because that's how he does it is. So how do I send that pack of baseball cards to that kid? How do I say, Josh Shipp is someone we're actually trying to work on for a masterclass, for this next year. But one of my favorite communicators from the school assembly world, and his whole deal is every student is one caring adult away from success. And what we need to do is to get busy, moral, hardworking, caring adults to be, in fact, caring adults. And I think followers of Jesus should have an advantage, but, Jesus' ministry, we think about it, Jesus' ministry, they didn't have cars. Sometimes they had donkeys, we see, but he mainly walked. Jesus did successful ministry at the pace of 3 miles an hour. Like that's crazy slow. Yeah. And maybe that wasn't a bug. Maybe that was a feature. That we go so fast and we miss out on, he says, don't prevent the kids from coming talking to me. He always had room for interruptions. And sometimes I feel like if I were interrupted, I would try and handle it well. But what if my pace is too busy to even notice the natural or God-given interruption? So takeaway, be interrupted today. 1, who's somebody you can thank that's still living, that's made an impact on your life? Come up with a meaningful way to tell them thank you today, whether it's a phone call, a message, a gift. And then who's somebody in your life that's one caring adult away from being impacted? And if we do that, I think that is mentorship. Ministry is wrapped up in mentorship, and it doesn't need to be a job. So anyway, so hopefully that's helpful. We want to continue. We're going to continue having these kind of conversations because we want to develop the rhythms and the muscles of being focused on outside of our own selves, be led by God's Spirit, and those are practical ways to be Spirit-led people. So followers of North Point, let's see who God wants, who God puts in your path today, or who God redirects so that you can be right there in their path. So
that's great.
All right.
You're going to want to wipe that phone off. I haven't washed my hands today. I didn't want to say anything. I mean, you started the game, and then I was like, I don't want to make it weird. So then I just went for it, and then you handed it to me first.
I will never come to this recording studio again without a different stick, because I realized, man, that put me in a tough spot where this comes by my face.
Right.
Now
so you're just going to want to, just like a.
Oh, I'm due for a trade-in. So I'm going straight to Verizon. So, all right, everybody have a great day. It matters that I say that. Everybody, I command you. In the name of the Lord, have a great day.
Amen.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.